Welcome to another episode of Make Mental Health Matter with the theme on Mondays as Mental Health Mondays. Apologies for coming on a little bit late. I couple technical difficulties, but also my guest canceled very last minute. So I was trying to reshift everything around and figure out what am I going to talk about today. Either way, you get stuck with me today again. So, as a reminder, if this is the first time you are watching, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, make sure you mash down that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. Or if you're watching from any of the streaming platforms, please make sure you add us into your favorites or your watch list or whatever it's called so that, again, you don't miss another episode. And like I was just saying, my guest unfortunately rescheduled very last minute this morning. And so I was scrambling a little bit to think about what would be the best thing to talk about specifically today. And I know that today is Memorial Day. Lots and lots of people have today off, or maybe they are celebrating with friends or family or whatever's going on today. Um, I want to remind you that Memorial Day is that day to remember those that have lost their life fighting in battle for the freedom of our country specifically. And really, I know that the day is centered around taking those opportunities to be with family or friends, neighbors, gathering together in celebration of the lives that were lost. Also, knowing that today can be a really hard day for people who are veterans that have been in the military, that are active military, that have lost somebody close to them, or just people in general, because sometimes we don't always know what the emotions that we're having, and loss is and can be a very hard thing for everyone and anyone. And so, even knowing that all the freedoms that we are provided in the USA are due to those that have served in the military and really fought for our country to have those rights that we have today. Sometimes people overuse those rights, sometimes people underuse those rights. It doesn't really matter, not about politics by any means, but I want to just take a moment to really remember those that we have lost. And also give you a chance to have a little bit more open dialogue. Since I don't have a guest today and I wasn't fully prepared on what I was going to talk about today, this show really can be interactive if you're watching it from a streaming platform or a TV streaming platform. Maybe you don't really have that option, but if you have the ability to jump on to BCC Evolution's webpage, wow, words, our YouTube page and or our Facebook page, the Make Mental Health Matter Facebook page, you can send me messages and ask questions, which is pretty cool. What I thought though might be a great thing to talk about today, since we are talking about grief and loss, also those that have come back from their tours, that have been in the military, that may be experiencing PTSD from losing a family, really. Like, I mean, they become family, losing a member of their family or losing a member of whatever you want to call it, right? Their tribe, like it becomes their tribe. And grief and loss can be really, really hard. It can also be really hard to be a person who has been in I am not overly military based. My dad was in the military. My husband's dad was also in the military, but I have never been there. It was not something that I really ever wanted to be a part of. I am very grateful and thankful for those that do choose that route in their life. And so I do want to honor them, of course. Losing a life in general is really, really hard. And especially knowing that they are going and serving their country. And there's always a possibility that they could lose their life, just like police officers, first responders, firefighters. They have um, more of a, like, the words are not popping in my head. They have more opportunities. That sounds interesting. I don't know why that word came, but more chance. There we go. More chance of potentially losing their life in their line of work that they chose to be a part of. And so it can be really, really challenging knowing that you maybe survived, or maybe you did come back and you did survive, but maybe you have more challenges that are happening now. Like, there's a lot of things, especially when we're talking about mental health, that can go into being a part of the military, serving our country, having family members die right next to you, right? There's a lot of trauma that happens with these events. And unfortunately, when somebody comes back and they're reintroduced into civilian life, there are so many emotions and so many things that happen that I can't even, I mean, it's hard for me to explain, but I have talked to many, many, many service members that they are really, really struggling, really, truly struggling. And I think as a whole, our whole country really is struggling. The whole world really is struggling in certain different ways. And a lot of what I've heard more so lately is this ability to function, like function normally, or function, not, I wouldn't say properly, but that's the word that's popping into my head, and I usually roll with the words that pop into my head. But there's this idea, right? So when I talk about grief and loss, I very much talk about it in the aspect of, we all grieve. We all have gone through loss. It could be the loss of a person, it could be loss of a pet, it could be a loss of a identity. Maybe the identity that you thought was going to be is no longer. Maybe you have experienced something very traumatic in your life, which now created this new identity of whoever you are. And not always is that identity possible positive. It could also be the loss of a relationship. It could be the loss of a job. It could be a loss of a place to live. It can be there's so many things that when we talk about loss and grief, it's not just losing a human life. It is more so, we have loss all the time and we don't talk about it enough. And what I find, especially in my group, because I run a grief and loss support group on Mondays. Unfortunately, today I had to skip because we have other things that we have to do this afternoon. And so, but every single Monday, for the most part, I run a grief and loss group that's called Never Alone Through Grief and Loss. And a lot of things that come up is they jump in and they're like, I'm not really sure that my situation is the same as. So we do a lot of comparing, first and foremost. And then we're like, well, do I really have anything that's valuable that I can add into this group? Am I going to sit here and just listen? Which is okay too. You have that ability with our group to just jump in and listen. It's all voice. There's no screen, and you can just listen and see, maybe you can identify with something that somebody else is talking about, or maybe it's a time to use your voice and really work through whatever you're experiencing at that moment. Again, I have lots of people that jump in that have lost relationships. The person is still living, that have lost a human that they were in a relationship with, or maybe they've lost a family member, which could be like my case, a sister, it could be a child, it could be a parent, a grandparent, um, of course, any age range of loss. And then we have those people that they actually are really experiencing physical ailment or disease, and they are in this space of loss with what they thought was going to be their life, and now they're in and out of hospitals, or they're in and out of doctor's appointments. They can't really function, they're now on disability. Like, there's so many ways that we grieve and go through loss in life, but yet we still tend to compare our situation with another's person's situation. And what I try to instill to anybody that I talk to is that we all experience things differently. My experience is going to be very different from your experience, and your experience is going to be very different from another person's experience. Even though you may have similar things that we go through, you will never fully understand what somebody else is experiencing. You can ask questions, you can see how they're feeling, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like, but you really truly will never be able to know exactly what somebody is experiencing, because you are an individual human. I am an individual human. And our brain really takes in so much information all at once, but somehow we have to be able to delete, distort, and generalize the 2 million bits of information that are coming into our head. So, even those of you that are watching this, you're going to have a very different experience from another person that is watching this, because your brain is automatically deleting, generalizing, or distorting whatever is coming out of my mouth. And it's going based off of your experience, not what I'm telling you to experience. It's going based off of your values, your beliefs, whatever those programs that run your life and your experiences is what you're going to hear me saying to you. The thing about that is, when we try to help somebody, maybe on this Memorial Day, we are going to a barbecue. So we happen to be going to a Colorado Mammoth game, which is the indoor lacrosse team. They're in the finals, which is amazing. We have our little family of season ticket holders right in our section. And so we're going to have a gathering with our friends and those people that we now call family, because we've all had our season tickets for like 10 plus years, and it's all been the same little section. And so we're going to go through and have this gathering and this celebration of our friendships, of being all Mammoth season ticket holders. And we have to think about the experiences of all of those people individually within this group. And maybe today is a hard day for some of them. Maybe today is a day of celebration. Maybe today is a day that they want to be there at the Mammoth game, but maybe they don't want to be there because they'd rather be at home um, doing whatever, right? So we go into these gatherings, and somehow we have to see through the eyes and the experience of others versus ourselves. But we always have this experience through our own eyes. And that's my experience. I am excited to go. I think it's weird that it's a 2 o'clock game, but it is what it is, right? I still have this chance to one more time this season go hang out with these people that I now call my family, because we've all been there for 10 plus years in the same sections, the same seats for the most part. But that's my experience. That's not going to be the same as yours. You would see it through different eyes, through different lens, through different values and beliefs that you have in your mind about celebration or not celebration on Memorial Day. I'm hoping that this makes sense where I'm going. But it ties all back into the experience piece. I experience things very differently than you experience them, and so on and so forth. And so when you say to anybody, "Oh, I know what you're going through." No, you actually don't know what they're going through. Your experience is going to be very different from theirs. So we have to really go into these conversations through the lens of being open to allow the conversations to flow. And the reason why I'm really telling you all of this is because on this day of remembrance for those who served and lost their life, my experience, because I haven't really had anybody that was in the military that passed away that I went to their funeral or that I remember. So my experience for Memorial Day is it's more distant for me, right? Like it's not my family, it's not my friends. Although I could probably think back to a time or think back to a person that maybe was in the military that potentially died, but I'm not recalling anything right now. So my experience is going to be more of a distant experience because everybody who I know has come back and they're all still alive. Somebody else who has lost a lot of people or one person or whomever it might be on this day is going to have probably more of an attached experience to today and what it really truly means. And I know that there are a lot of um um oh my gosh, my brain just stopped. There are a lot of places that they go and put the flags on the tombstones, and that is the way that they go and celebrate the lives. And so that's going to be more of like that attached um experience based off of today. So as we go into these gatherings, whatever we might be doing today, I want you to just think about how your experience is going to be very different from the other person's experience and so on and so forth. And how can we really get more curious in life? How can we not push on our thoughts process to other people how today should be remembered or how today should be set up, and really have that aspect of celebration if that's what you choose to do for today. I'm going to give you this might be able to connect it a little bit more other than me like saying these things that are very general. I feel like I'm generalizing right now and I don't like to do that as much. So I'm going to give you a situation, a story that I have. So for me, with my sister and her passing, I choose in February, always around February 19th. I choose February 19th, 20th, right around that time. I choose to have BCC Evolutions Gala because I oftentimes in the past, I just wanted February to go by. I didn't want anything to do with it. I know it's the month of love, but I hated February. Like it was the worst month in my mind because I had lost two people within 2 days in February. And I just, was like, okay, I'm done with February. Well, I chose later to bring in celebration. I want to be able to celebrate my sister's life. I want to be able to remember her in celebration, not in grief and loss. I don't want to be stuck there. Like that was not the feeling that I wanted. And so I chose to create a celebration around this day. I have chosen to have a gathering with people to celebrate those of the lives that we have lost. Well, I had somebody say to me, I don't even understand why you would even do a gala when I had somebody die by suicide. All I wanted to do was sit in my basement and cry. Why would you even want to go out and celebrate their life or do anything on that day? And I was like, what? Like for me, I was like, wait, are you telling me how to grieve and how to go through loss and whoa, 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 whoa. My experience is very different from yours. And maybe you are somebody who wants to go down in your basement and you want to cry all day. Maybe you are somebody who just wants to isolate versus be among people. And that's okay. But that's not how I choose to celebrate my sister's life. That's not how I choose to celebrate the lives of the people that I have lost throughout life. I choose to celebrate them. I choose to grow forward. I don't choose to sit in the sadness and in the pain. I was there for so long. I choose to celebrate. And that's my choice. You don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with you. But however we choose to honor the lives of those that we have lost is our choice. And I'm not going to say that you are wrong in what you are saying by any means, and if that's what you choose to do is to go and cry or be sad or whatever that is, that's okay. But I want to honor you in your choices as much as I want you to honor me in my choices. And so really that's what I'm talking about even today as we go about our day during Memorial Day is how do you choose to be? And whatever that is absolutely okay. It is perfect. It's perfect for you. And that's okay. So we do have to go to a short, quick little sponsored spot. And then I will be back and we'll talk a little bit more about Memorial Day, how our experiences really affect our life, and how we can be a little bit more open to those around us and whatever their experience may be. So we'll be right back after this sponsored spot. And like that, I'm back like magic. All right. So if you are just joining now, which is awesome, thank you so much for joining. As a reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you mash down that subscribe button and or add us into your favorites list or watch list or whatever they happen to call it so that you don't miss another episode. And unfortunately, my guest had to cancel last minute. So you get me, and that's okay. But what I was really talking about earlier is grief and loss and Memorial Day and how we, within our own experiences, choose to whether we're celebrating or maybe we choose the opposite and we want to cry or sulk or whatever that looks like on that day for us is okay. However, we choose to honor a loss or grieving, going through that grief process is perfect. There is no, I know there's lots of books out there that tell you the steps of grief that will guide you through what you're supposed to be experiencing. But I want, but there is no process. There really is no process. It's going to be your own process. Maybe at one moment you're sad, one moment you're mad, one moment you're happy, one moment you're celebrating. Whatever that might look like for you, again, is perfect. And I know that oftentimes, or well, okay, not oftentimes, but lately, and this is where I'm going to kind of shift into. So I know like Memorial Day, what it is, and why we have this day to really celebrate those that have lost their life in really serving our country. But I want to shift a little bit to how I might be able to provide value in your life. because yes, today is that day of remembrance. It is also that day of gathering. It is a day that we can really honor the lives of those that have been lost, but we can also honor our lives of those that are living. And I think that's one thing that we don't talk about enough is how can we honor ourselves as we live and not just staying in that survival mode. And maybe you understand what I'm saying, maybe you don't. Maybe you're not in that survival mode and you're in the living. You're really truly living. But sometimes we can go back and forth between survival and living. And I have heard that the most lately. It seems that all across the world, we really truly are suffering in silence. We don't want to talk about what's going on. We tell these lies to ourselves that maybe we're not good enough, we're not worthy, we are a burden on others. Our story is not as valuable as another person's story. And when you hear people say, "Well, my what I'm going through isn't as bad as what they're going through, so I really should feel good about my situation." Well, that's just a way to downplay whatever you're going through. And we do that as humans. We downplay our emotions so much that sometimes we start believing those stories that we're telling ourselves in our head. And those can go with I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not safe, I don't have the abilities that other people have. I don't have the financial reach that other people have. There's so many different stories that we tell ourselves. It could also be simple words that we use like I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I'm struggling. Like struggle is one of those words. I but we also have to acknowledge these words when they start coming up of like am I really struggling? So here's some tools that I want to go into. And this is just because I've been hearing a lot lately. So I've been coaching a lot more lately and the things that I'm hearing a lot or very similar patterns and beliefs amongst the people that I'm coaching. Of course, I specialize in depression, anxiety, trauma, suicidal ideation, and other mental health challenges. So these are often the things that come up, but more so lately is like, I'm really struggling and I don't know why. And I don't really know what the emotion is behind it, but I know that I don't want to be in this place. And when we start getting in those cycles, so you can start calling them cycles, um, we start going down these rabbit holes of, well, if I quit my job or lose my job, then I'm not going to have any money. If I don't have any money, then I'm not going to have a house. If I don't have a house, then I'm going to be homeless. And if I'm homeless, then what am I going to do with my life? I won't have any food. I won't have this. I won't have that. Right? Like it can start going into this rabbit hole really quickly. And one thing that I want to offer to you, and this, of course, it has been helpful for me. Again, like we've been talking, my experience is going to be very different from your experience, but I have had other people that it has been helpful for. One way is when you get those words, right? Like when you're like, I'm struggling, I'm suffering, I am dumb, I am not worthy, I'm not confident, whatever it might be. I'm just throwing out words, whatever your word is. Take that word. So, am I really struggling? Ask it a question. Like, ask yourself a question. Am I really struggling, or what is this feeling that I'm having? Is it that I am struggling with this one thing, or is it like a general, like something general? And really like deep dive into what is that thing? Like, Am I struggling with friendship? Am I struggling with a relationship? Am I struggling with money? Am I struggling with cleanliness? Am I struggling with hygiene? Am I struggling with brushing my teeth? Am I struggling with my teeth in general? Like, what is that thing, right? Like, what am I struggling with? Can you pinpoint what you are specifically struggling with? Is it that I'm really sad? Is it that I'm mad? Is it that I am glad? I know that doesn't even fit there, but you get the point, hopefully. What is it that I'm like really truly struggling with? And then what can I do to change that? And maybe you know, and maybe you don't know. And either way, it's okay. But what you can do is shift the language around how you are presenting yourself. So instead of, like, for me, instead of saying I'm struggling, a different word that I would use is I'm challenged with this thing, right? So I'm going to use finances because that seems to be a big thing lately, and a good majority of people that I have talked to is it's the financial aspect for them. I don't have enough money for XYZ. I can't pay this bill due to blah blah blah. I can't ever get consistency or stability. So instead of bringing up the, like, the negatives, which is like the I can't, I won't, um those type of words, we start shifting them. So you're shifting from struggle to maybe challenge. So it's not like I'm struggling, I'm challenged with this thing. It's just a challenge, right? Like, it feels lighter, at least for me, when I say challenge. Like, I don't say a mental health disorder or disease or diagnosis. You have a mental health challenge because that recovery is always possible. The same goes with struggling, whether it's financially or whatever it might be. Recovery is always possible. And maybe you don't think about struggling with recovery, but maybe we should. Maybe we should think about recovery or hope with struggle, because there's always hope, whatever struggle you're going through. There's also recovery from whatever you're struggling with. And so if we think about these things in a different way of I'm not struggling, I just have a challenge that I'm going through right now. Like, how can we start to break the cycle or really like get the cycle flowing more? Like, this is the action that I use for flow. And I mean, I am going through several things myself, right? Like, I am starting to understand where I stop myself. So maybe this cycle, then it stops. Like, I keep stopping myself at certain parts. And that's what I oftentimes hear from my clients and from other people that I talk to is they're like, I get going on this really great path and then all of a sudden it stops. And I don't know what that thing that stops my cycle of keeping going. I don't know if that was proper English. But I know for me, that is something that shows up in my life. It's a pattern that shows up in my life. And so, where can I put a little bit more understanding into my pattern to get this flow? I want it to flow. I want it to feel easy. I want it to have movement. I want it to flow nice. And it is possible to be easy and free and flowy, isn't it? It is, right? That's right. It is. So how do we get this flow? How do we get this ease? How do we get this peace? How do we get this joy? Whatever that is for you, how do we shift those words that we're using or those feelings and really start allowing ourselves to feel them? Am I really struggling or am I just having a challenge right now? Is this a pattern that I've noticed in my life? Is it just something that just started now? Or is it a pattern that I've had in my life? Can I think back to a time when this happened before? Or is it something new? And is it something within myself? Or is it something that's external? Or is it somebody else? And two key points of this are if it's someone else, it's not yours to take on. So, how can you let that go? And then if it's something external, that's really not yours to take on either. It may be a situation that's external, but you don't have to take on that situation within yourself. So, how do we let that go and let this flow, this ease, this peace, this joy? How do we get that into our bodies and working through our muscles? And I don't I don't have the answers for you. This is something that you definitely have to find for yourself. But how can you do that and start shifting even the words that we use? So if it's a negative, how do we make it a positive? And I'm trying to think of different words. So, I mean, we have struggle, but using challenge. Maybe I wouldn't say lack of confidence, but it could translate like so maybe I have a lack of confidence and it translates into confidence. Um Not worthy or feeling unworthy, and how do we translate it into worthiness? I mean, there's a lot of different words, but how can you think of the positive aspects of that and really get more into this flow and this ease? So I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. And a lot of times, when somebody comes to me or at me with an attitude, what I think initially is this about me or is it about them? And if it's about them, I let it go because that's not mine to take on. But if it is about me, then what is it within me that causes that reaction or causes that trigger or causes me to get triggered, which happens too. But what is it within me that causes that? And so it's a little soul searching, right? Like, is there a pattern? Again, is there a pattern in my life that this shows up? Like, is it in relationships specifically? Is it in finances specifically? Is it in interaction with people? Is it out in social gatherings? Is it when a certain word is said? Is that what triggers me? Right? So, like, there's a lot of layers here, of course. And so we have to start peeling back that onion. It's like, seriously, like peeling back the onion to getting to that root cause. And if we can get to the root cause of whatever's going on, then we can start shifting it. Good to bad, right? We can start shifting, like fear is another one that a lot of people have. It could be fear of animals, it could be fear of snakes, fear of spiders, all the phobias, right? But how can you shift those to not be fearful of them? Of course, you don't have to like them by any means, but you don't have to be afraid. That go also what popped in my head was social anxiety. You don't have to be afraid to step in to a gathering or in to a public place. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to like it, and that's okay. But how do we shift the fear that's stopping this cycle? Right? Like we're going, we're stopping, we're going, we're stopping, we're going, we're stopping. But how can we create this flow, this ease, this peace, this joy without that negativity or that anxiety or whatever that word is for you? How can we shift it within ourselves? And then how can we also look at these things about other people and not be judgmental? I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what you're experiencing, but I'm not going to judge you about that. Whatever it is that you're going through, whatever you are experiencing, whether it is on the negative or the positive spectrum, whatever that is, I will never fully understand what you're experiencing. And so I will honor the place wherever you are. And how can we really start shifting if it is in those negatives into the positives? And sometimes it takes some work within ourselves to really understand what we are experiencing and how that translates into the conversation that we're having with others. Am I pushing off my emotions to you because I am scared what you're going to say to me? I know for me, after my sister passed, I was really living in fear. I was so scared of losing somebody else in my life. I was pushing everybody away from me. Even my own kids, I was pushing them all away from me because I was so scared and so fearful of losing somebody else in my life. It was manifesting into anger and rage and uh madness was the word that popped into my head. Like, it was like I was mad. I was so angry, and it was coming out towards everybody that I loved. And until I did the deep inner work to figure out that fear was what was locked in there, and once I was able to shift that, I actually shifted it into curiosity, which became this magical thing, right? I went from fear, which was that negative, like lock stuck emotion, to this curiosity. And it was like wonderment. So I got the cycle flowing again, right? Like this is where everything in my life really started changing and shifting. And I stopped just surviving and I really started living. And being in that space was so empowering. I found my strength. I didn't need to just survive. I could really start living, and I didn't have to be in fear anymore. And I could be more in this flow. And I'm not saying this is perfect by any means. It's a work in progress. I'm still working because my monkey mind, as people call it, is I shift back into that survival mode. Our brain does that. Our brain is trained to protect us. It has that fight or flight mechanism, and it really is truly designed to protect us. So if something's scary, if something's fearful, if something doesn't feel good, it wants to go towards pleasure and stay away from pain. So it protects you, and it tells you to go around, or it tells you to shove it down, or it tells you that you're going to be mad, or you're going to be angry, or we're not going to deal with this right now. But once you retrain your brain to deal with it right at that moment, and you start shifting that dialogue that's in your head to positive, that teaches your brain to stop just surviving. It teaches it to start living and start really, like, not surviving, really just living and functioning at a higher level, which is really cool, isn't it? Yeah, it's great. Like, we have really powerful mechanism in our brain, in our heads, our brain is in our head, um, that we can use to the advantage of helping us get out of that fight or flight and get more into this peace and ease and this flow. And again, whatever that looks like for you is perfect. It will not look the same as mine. Again, we experience things so differently. We have to be aware of the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we tell others. I oftentimes, when I'm on stage, I talk about this a lot, is if you're running around, I call it the Eeyore syndrome. Nobody loves me, everybody hates me, I'm gonna go eat worms. If you're running around that way, your mind will start drawing in all of those negative things. Nobody likes me, everybody hates me. I wouldn't go eat worms, but hey, if that's your thing. It starts drawing in those negative things, right? But how do we shift that? We can shift the words that we say. I'm strong. I'm powerful. I am safe. I can breathe. I can do anything that I put my mind to. I am powerful. I am strong. I am worthy. I am confident. I am brilliant. Whatever that is for you. I'm curious. Don't use the nots though. So one thing about this is you don't want to say like I'm not worthy or that wasn't the right one. I'm not anxious, right? So you wouldn't use the not in front of it. You don't use any like negative type words like no or not or won't. So like I'm not anxious because your brain goes to the word anxious and it deletes the not part. So you want to say I you would be like I am joy. I'm like what's the word other than anxious? My brain apparently went to the anxious part. So I am strong. That's the word that popped in my head. I don't know. I am conversational. I am powerful. I am um man, see, I got to think about it. I got to think about like what those words really really are. Like instead of having like social anxiety, you are able to be in this space of flow and ease and peace and joy and whatever that is. Hopefully that makes sense, but you don't want to use the not in front of it because your brain goes directly to what it is versus the not. It like deletes the not part. So, anyways, that was a whole lot of talking about really Memorial Day, going through grief and loss, our experiences versus my experience versus your experience and your experience versus another person's experience, how we can really start to retrain our brain so that it focuses on the positives versus the negatives. Is it about us or is it about another person, a situation? Can we let it go? Or do we need to do some internal work to find out what that trigger is within ourselves so that we can get that peace and ease and flow? And whatever that looks like for you is perfect. And if you need any additional resources, people to talk to, somebody to help guide you through that process of understanding, definitely go to bccevolution.org. I have a new page that is going up. It is our trusted resource hub. I am in the process of doing it, but if you're not on our newsletters, I have been doing a series of the last 10 days of May. We've been sending out some really great tips and tricks for the end of May, and who knows, that may just keep continuing because I've gotten a lot of really great feedback on how it's been helpful. We've talked about mindfulness, we've talked about um, overcoming and having tools. I was like, what have we talked about? There's so much that has been really good with these this last 10 days of May episode in our newsletters. So if you're not a part of the newsletter, go make sure you sign up. Also, if this was helpful, again, drop me a comment. Let me know. Like when I have these days of my guests happen to bail on me at the very last minute, what are some of the things that you want to learn more about? Because I've got a whole toolbox of tools and a whole tool belt. There we go. A whole tool belt of tools that I would be more than happy to share with you if it is helpful and gives you more resources. Because again, Mondays are for building resources, whether it's people resources or resources like this. And really the goal of Mondays is to bring in those resources for you to help you. And be sure to share this with anyone that you feel like it would be useful. I hope this was helpful, really that last minute gathering of my thoughts of what should I talk about, especially when we talk about Memorial Day, loss, grief, those type of emotions, and how we can help ourselves to be able to help others. Again, if you need more resources, go to bccevolution.org. There's also a free download on there if you haven't downloaded it yet. It is the 7 strategies for mental wellness, including a safety and self-care plan. And if you need further guidance, just reach out to me if you have any questions, concerns, or things that are coming up. But either way, join me back. I go this way, that way. I don't know, whichever way. Join me back this Wednesday. I do have an incredible guest that she will bring you even more resources, tell you a little bit about her story and her journeys on the theme of Warrior Wednesdays this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And if you can't join that, make sure you join back next Monday. I do have a guest scheduled for next Monday, but maybe you want to be a guest. Reach out also, and we'll get you on the show. Either way, have a wonderful Memorial Day and the rest of your Monday. Thanks for watching.
Greetings, I'm Angel Marie Monticelli, host of Energize You TV, every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Go to Fresh Takes right here on E360 and get Reikified and energized today.